Okay, so as I said, I am Dr. Joanna Broussard. We are here for the Dissertation Attitude Committee and Topic Selection webinar. I am a qualitative specialist with Statistics Solutions. We are a full-service dissertation consulting and editing company, and we will talk more about that later. For those who are unaware or have forgotten, this webinar is being recorded. You will receive a copy of the recording along with the PowerPoint presentation within 1 week. We do have 3 big topics to discuss, as you can see from the title. So let us get started. So first, attitude. If you're just starting the dissertation journey, it is a long, arduous, tedious process, and it can be very daunting, and it is easy to become discouraged. I mean, you're working on the same thing for 1 year, 2 years. I've had friends who reached the 6-year mark. I've had clients who've been dissertating for between 8 and 9 years. It can be a long process. So you need to stay focused on the things you can control, not on the things that you cannot control. And I realize that's easier said than done. I wasn't always the best at focusing on what I could control when I was a graduate student. And so that is one reason I do like to spend some time when I talk about attitude, talking about how to manage stress, because look, you will feel stress during this process. This is a major commitment. You are committing to doing new research, to conducting a study, and your obtaining of your doctoral degree rests upon successful completion and defense of the project. It's easy to be stressed, but that's why maintaining a proper attitude, looking at the process for what it is, a process by which you are learning how to conduct professional level research, and as well as choosing a committee and a good topic from the beginning can help make the process a lot more manageable. So what can you do? You can stay in balance. Whenever possible, do something to help diffuse stress. If that means working out every day, even just going for a walk at the end of the day, a run, hitting the gym. If your school has a rec center, most likely you're paying fees to access it. Take advantage of these opportunities. If not, take 1 day off per week in order to relax. Spend time with friends, spend time with family, snuggle your pets, watch a comfort show, play video games, do something not connected to your dissertation to take your mind off it. Give yourself that space to relax and that space to breathe. Your dissertation is important, but it should not be the only thing that you place value on during this time. You're a person and you deserve rest, a social life, fun. If your day off means you just sleep, do that. Your time frames are important, but if you don't finish your dissertation within 1 year, that's not going to be the end of your scholarly career. Try to meet your deadlines or as close to them as possible, but don't feel that you have to make the pressure of being the perfect student. You will have setbacks at some point. Maybe you can't get the data you need quickly. Maybe the interview process that you're trying of the people you're trying to interview, maybe it's taking time. Maybe there are scheduling conflicts, and that slows down data collection. Data analysis may take longer than anticipated. Getting the IRB to approve your study may take longer. I know one thing I wasn't aware until I reached the IRB stage of my process was the IRB at my school only met once every quarter. And so sometimes you have to hurry up to get your proposal in, only to wait for the IRB to meet and make a decision. So you have to realize that sometimes the ideal time frame is not something you are going to actually have. Sometimes life happens. COVID-19 happened, and a lot of grad students had to have their dissertations changed, their deadlines pushed back, or things happen. If you're doing archival research, getting access to the archive can take time. Travel arrangements take time. So realizing that time frames aren't always what you think they're going to be when you first start. And then let go of any unrealistic expectations. A big one is thinking you won't have revisions. You will likely have revisions, multiple rounds of revision. Remember that the dissertation is a document produced in essence by a committee. You will have your chair, I had 5 committee members. So that was 5 people besides myself who looked at my dissertation and who had to give their stamp of approval. And so it was one of those things where each one wanted different things. Each one noticed different things. The revisions are there to make the document the best that it can be for the format that it's in, a dissertation. There will probably be extensive revisions. A good committee puts you through multiple rounds of revisions as you go through each drafting phase. Expectations can also include that data collection will be perfect, data analysis will be immediate. I mean, I know sometimes you think, oh, I know my material. I've studied this. I've been working on this since my master's thesis days. I know a lot about it. And then the data you collect can stump you for what it actually means. And you have to spend time wrestling with the data you have in order to understand what it actually means so you can then write up the results and discuss them. And even then with writing, an expectation is that writing will come smoothly. We all know how writing works, right? What we think will take us an hour to write can take us 2 to 3 days. What we think will be a slog that takes us a week to write comes together in an hour. It's difficult to predict how long the writing will take, so making sure you give yourself time to breathe and write is essential. And all of these things help with the attitude that will keep you focused, that will help you reduce some of the stress by controlling what you can. And that is essential. And one way to really help with that is choosing a good committee. It can be very daunting picking a committee. Who am I going to work with? How do I approach these people and ask them? Well, once you've got your committee chair, which is its own set of how do I choose a chair, but once you've got your chair in place, ask your chair for suggestions. You have to think about a few things. And we'll talk about all of them, but to summarize briefly, do these other committee members have areas of expertise that will help me? Do they balance each other out? Are their personalities such that I can work with them? Can they work with each other? Different committee members will notice different things, yes, but you don't want committee members who don't get along personally and professionally with each other, as that can lead to butting heads, them wanting you to go in different directions, and ultimately more stress. Also, do these committee members have the time to work with me? Like I said, we'll talk more about these things because you need to do your research on each potential member. If possible, sit down and talk to them, go to their office, have a Zoom meeting, something where you can just sit and talk to them, but talk to other students who have worked with them. What was the process like? Are these committee members whose process is something that will work with you and for you? If you need someone who's very hands-on, very micromanaging, a committee member who is standoffish and who waits until you finish a full chapter or a full dissertation draft may not be helpful. But if you're not someone who works well under supervision and micromanagement, someone who is very hands-on, who wants to have discussions and meetings every week and see a progress every week, will only add to your stress and frustration. Talk to people they've worked with to ask about the process. Look at papers they've published. Is this something that can help you? Whether it be content, method, structure. Are they someone who understands the analytical tools you want to work? Are they someone versed in the theoretical framework you want to use, the instrument you want to use? Have they done research on this topic? Maybe not as much as your chair has, but do they know something that could help? Are they someone who has some sort of expertise to balance out your work and other committee members? And like I said, ask them questions. Do they have the time that you need? Do they have time to serve on your committee? When I was starting my dissertation process, there were 3 potential chairs that I had to choose from. And I'm using the chair as a point of discussion because it is important to think about this. One of the potential chairs, Dr. Andrew King, I really wanted to work with him, but due to health reasons, he was in the process of retiring. And so he was not serving as a chair for any dissertation committee. He was willing to be a committee member, but not a chair. Then there was Dr. Nathan Crick. Nathan Crick had 13 other graduate students at the time I started working on my dissertation. He didn't have a lot of time to head up another committee. Nathan was also someone else who was very hands-on, very much a micromanager. And I knew that that was, and when he and I spoke, we both, having taken a class under him, we both recognized that we're great to talk outside of work. We can talk about work at a pub. We could talk about work at a coffee shop. But our working styles were such that we did not work well together. We would butt heads over things that would just slow down the process. So that's how I selected the chair of Stephanie Gray. She had similar interests theoretically. She wasn't as familiar with the content of what I wanted my dissertation to be as I would have liked, but we had similar interests. We had similar ideas about the research process. And she was someone who I could get along with and have a positive professional relationship. Also, look at potential committee members' feedback, teaching styles. As I mentioned, hands-on, hands-off. If you can, take a class with a potential committee member before you start selecting your committee. Are they the type of committee member who wants you to do multiple drafts of a paper during a semester, where they give you detailed feedback along the way? Or do they just say, here's the paper topic, turn in your paper at the end of the semester and I'll give you feedback over the break? Both methods are valid, but some people work better with one than others. Some people need more hands-on approach than others do. And so these are things to think about as you select committee members. And so a few tips to think about. Like I said, how easy are they to work with? Will you get along with them on both a personal and a professional level? You can disagree with your committee members, but disagreements need to take the form of scholarly disputes where you go back and forth, focused on the ideas. I see what you're saying. I think this instead, and here are the reasons why I say this. You want to go with the thesis, antithesis in a model of disputation in order to produce a synthesis. Are they someone you can get along with? Do they have skills and knowledge, as I've mentioned, that you or another committee member is lacking that would be beneficial? It's often idealized that your chair knows your theory and something about your content, but you may have a content expert. You may have a methods expert. Picking committee members who have different specialties that will bring something positive to the process helps mitigate problems, because one, they will know, okay, I'm here to help with method. I am here to help with analysis. I am here with content. I am here with overall theory, etc. What are they familiar with? What are they specialized in? Do their areas of expertise help fill in gaps that you don't have or that other committee members don't have? And in general, try to stay away from people who are unknown to you or to your chair. They may be great. These people who are unknown may come about, and they may be someone who is just the perfect committee member. But when neither you nor your chair are familiar with them, there's a lot of questions regarding personality conflict, and just how time frame and all of these things that can be too much to surmount. But ultimately, the committee you pick needs to be a committee that serves you. They are there to make your dissertation the best it can be. And so you need to pick people who will serve that interest. And last but not least, trust your gut. I know that we like to sit there and go, well, emotions are not always the most rational. They're not. But if someone feels like a bad choice after meeting them, honor that feeling unless overwhelming evidence presents to the contrary. You ultimately know what's best for you and for your project, and so you have to trust that you will select the best committee possible from your available faculty members. It's not easy, and it's scary, because you are approaching people and asking them to be mentors as you move from what is essentially a junior colleague to being a full-fledged member of a scholarly community. But that is their role. Their role is to take you from apprentice to journeyman, and someone who then understands how to conduct professional quality research. And so it is for your benefit that they are to work, and you need to really be keeping that in mind as you go through the list of potential committee members. And so let's talk about your topic. A good topic, a well thought out topic, a planned topic can help mitigate stress, can keep you motivated, and can help you move forward. Now, in the time frame of this webinar, we don't really have time to go into detail with topic selection for individual topics, but let's think about a few things that can help you. Often we suggest to people who are in this stage and lost, and I would suggest this to students when I was a professor, work backwards. What are you interested in? What variables are you interested in studying, in knowing more about? What do you want? What do you find passion in looking into? How would you want to collect your data? What types of data would you want to collect? Think about these things, and then you can then narrow down potential topics. Do as much reading as you can on other papers in areas of interest. Once you know what interests you, look for gaps in the literature that you can fill. Look at the sections of papers where they mention future research could do this. Hey, does this suggested future research sound interesting to you? Then that's something to think about as you narrow your topic down. Are there any issues or limitations that studies put forward that you could turn into a research question? Would a replication study be appropriate? Has someone done a really neat study that's the first study of its kind? Hey, could it be replicated? That's something that you could think about as a topic. Has someone done a study on a topic you're interested in a different population than the one you want to study? Well, you could look what they've done for guidance, but then bring it to a new population. You don't need to reinvent the wheel when you select a topic. Sometimes you need to start simple and then start saying, okay, these are some things I'm interested in. What about them interests me? Pick some questions that you want to think about, and then look and see if people have studied it. If so, what has been studied? What hasn't been studied? How has it been studied? And so forth. Where can you bring some sort of new knowledge, a new method? Has something only been studied with a particular methodology? Well, there's this new methodology that's been taking traction in the past few years that no one has applied to this topic. Or there's a new theory that's come out. Maybe we've learned something new about a population or about a particular topic since the last study was done. One of my master's theses was on boasting and the performance of masculinity in the Icelandic sagas. It was historical linguistic research. I applied a new theoretical framework to understanding how 13th century Icelandic saga writers presented Icelandic Nordic masculinity through boast and insult contests. And through that process of looking at the same topics through a new theoretical lens, I found gaps in the literature that no one had known because no one had used this lens before. And through looking at those gaps, I was able to find new information that fleshed out our knowledge of what it meant to be seen as masculine in Nordic medieval Iceland. And so I was able to bring new knowledge and new findings simply by taking an existing population and reading it through a new lens. You don't have to start from scratch. You can take what's been done and you can just shift gears. This is one thing to think about, because if you try to start from scratch and find something no one has ever done, you're probably going to spin your wheels for too long, that you will get stressed and you will give up. So look to the literature to see where you can sort of help fill in gaps. And then think about your research question. Your question, whether it be qualitative, quantitative, mixed methods, critical, the research question needs to be reasonable. It needs to be something that you can dig in deep and get in depth with, but it needs to be small enough you can finish it in a reasonable time frame. Again, my master's thesis looked at performance of masculinity in Iceland because I wanted to finish within a year. I limited myself to the family sagas of 13th century Iceland, ignoring the legendary sagas, ignoring the bishop sagas, etc. I looked only at the family historical sagas. I limited the range of topic, so that way I limited potential texts. Just like if you say, I want to study the perceptions of middle school math teachers in the state of Texas. That's a lot of math teachers. Texas is a large state, and so you may want to limit to one county in Texas. You have to think about, how long it will take you to obtain the data, how long it will take you to analyze the data, how long it will take you to write up the results. So keep your question reasonable and focused. You can use sites like ProQuest, Google Scholar, your library's database to look for literature to help you see where you can fill in gaps, where you can find appropriate questions. And remember, when you're reading through previous literature, make an annotated bibliography. Whatever bibliographic style and citation style you're using, whether it be Chicago, MLA, APA, American Anthropology, Harvard A, Harvard B, Turabian, which is a very uncommon style, but there are a few disciplines who use Turabian still. Make the bibliographic entry for every source you read, whether it be book or journal article, and then write up a 2 to 3 paragraph summary of the paper, its topic, its methods, its findings. This way you can then see what common questions keep popping up, what common limitations people keep butting into, what gaps need to be filled and people keep talking about. Do multiple scholars keep saying, hey, we need to look at this, someone else needs to look at this? If you see people constantly looking for someone to answer a particular question, but you cannot find someone else who has answered that question, that's something you should star and consider. And then don't forget to don't feel that you can't ask your chair. Sometimes you may go to your chair and say, look, I don't have a research question, but I'm interested in these topics. I would like to study strategies for improving standardized test scores among non-native English speakers in the school district I grew up in, or the school district that either I or my spouse or my parents teach in, or my friends, the school district I'm a part of somehow. I would like to study this. Can you help me narrow? But there's a lot of information. Can you help me narrow it down? Ask your chair for professional opinions. Now, when we say they will be respectful but honest, they may tell you that your ideas are something that, will be hard to get traction in because either the population is too difficult to study, or maybe it's something that they feel, looking at the literature in the field, it's been overstudied and they may want to direct you elsewhere so that you don't feel like you're just having trouble finding a way to get that niche that we want with our dissertation. When you go to ask your chair for advice, it always helps if you can come with some sort of a suggestion. Hey, look, I've been looking at the literature and here's some things I'm thinking about. I'm not sure if this is something that I can do in 1 to 2 years. I'm not sure if maybe you want to use a certain method. You know, I've had clients who said, I want to use grounded theory. It's qualitative, but I'm generating a theory. And that's where I have to warn them to prepare for a 5 to 6 year commitment minimum because of the iterative process of collecting and analyzing data, generating theory, collecting more data, applying it to your theory, and then altering the theory as new data comes in until you reach theoretical saturation. It's time consuming, but it sounds really awesome. And so, especially someone who's come from a quantitative background into a qualitative approach, it's tempting. But it's also something that if you really aren't prepared to spend that time, a good chair will steer you away from that and say, let's try to do something that we can finish in 1 to 2 years. Because they want you to move swiftly because one, matriculation rates are part of the ways departments get funded, and two, they know from experience as scholars and as professors, and I saw this from grad school through my own teaching, the longer students take on a project like this, the less likely they become to finish it. And so they want you to move quickly so that way you don't get discouraged and bogged down in detail. So come with ideas that you can discuss, because that helps narrow down topics of discussion with your chair. That helps keep the meeting focused on the agenda, and that will help move forward. So we do have some time for questions. This is something that we can talk about, and it's something that we could easily talk about for long periods of time. But when you're planning and you're early in your dissertation stage, you have to think about your attitude. And I do want to say this. I didn't say this earlier, but I want to say this now that we have time. The dissertation is a marathon. It is not a sprint. You need to prepare for a long haul. Other things you can do as you're taking coursework, every class, try to find some way to build on the assignments that will help your dissertation. Take a class in a method you would like to use so you can become familiar with it. Use the class seminar papers as a way to work out ideas and become familiar with the literature. All of these things, there are so many ways that we can help make it more manageable. Stress reduction, you can't avoid stress, but taking time to rest. I want to make sure that I emphasize this. You are not machines, you are people. You need and you deserve rest. If you don't take time to rest, your body will tell you when you will rest, and it will take it for you. So take a day off. Let's see what we have in the Q&A. What's the number one tip I would give someone to navigating the process, specifically when developing the official research questions? Ooh, that is a good question, Tori. Good question. Okay, so let's start with that, and I'll get to you in a second, Kimmy. The number one tip to navigating the process. If anything, I would say, and this might sound counterintuitive to some, take breaks. Take, like I said, 1 day off per week to rest and do something to take your mind off it. When I was working on my dissertation, I didn't take a lot of breaks until the point where I just got frustrated and I couldn't see what my data was saying. And I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong because I had followed the process, but nothing was making sense. So I took a break, and I was doing something really stupid at the time. Well, stupid it didn't use a lot of brain power. I was doing my daily quests in World of Warcraft. You know, though, if you play the games like World of Warcraft, when you reach the maximum level, you get these repetitive daily quests. You do the same thing every day. You don't put any thought behind it, but it's something that allows you to just sort of keep your body busy while your brain's just wandering. And it was during that process that I figured out what I was missing in the analysis. When you're stuck, take your mind off your work by doing something that will either move some part of your body physically or just is so unconnected and repetitive that your brain sort of goes into a meditative flow and you let the ideas come and go. When you're working on your research questions, you need to know your material. You need to know your material and you need to be able to talk it through. Don't get bogged down in the number of questions. Get bogged down in, can the question serve you to seek what you want to see? It's not easy, but research questions take time to formulate, and a good chair will help you with that. Go with ideas, they will help you word them, they will help you narrow them down. Okay, let's see. Kimmy, pass-through program thesis is foundational to dissertation. How can I change it from a theory development project? That might be something that requires a little bit of time, because I'm not sure what you mean by a theory development project. Can you pop another section in there, Kimmy, to explain that? While I look at Chris, how early in the doctoral program should I start looking for a committee chair? It will depend upon if you're in a fast pass program. I know when my last year in my program, we started doing a fast pass, which was 3 years total. You started working immediately. But if you're in a traditional doctoral program, I would say start thinking about your chair after your first year. Take a couple classes. At the end of the first year, if you're a full-time student, that will be 6 classes. That way you should take a variety of professors so you can get a sense of what they're like. So, I mean, from the beginning, I guess you could say from the beginning, by choosing different professors your first year to sort of see who you might want to work with and what their specialties are. I know our program had what they called an Introduction to Graduate Studies course, which each week 1 to 2 faculty members would come in. They would talk about their research that they did. They would talk about their areas of interest, and that was helpful for figuring out who you might want to work with. If your program offers that, do that. If they don't, use your coursework in your first semester and your second semester to help you find someone that you can want to work with. Okay, so Kimmy, you went along with your chair's recommendation to develop theory. It's not a bad idea to do that, but it's not exactly the most exciting at times. Yeah, theoretical saturation is something that causes a lot of burnout. I mean, I don't know how far you are in the process and if it's possible to move direction, but you may need to just talk to your chair and say, look, I don't think I'm getting anywhere. I'm spinning my wheels, and and be honest, I know one thing that I have always hated about graduate programs is, okay, you're year 2, you've got some time. But one thing I've hated about graduate programs is how oftentimes, whether intentionally or not, they make students feel that they're alone, that you're the only one who feels stressed, you're the only one who's depressed, you're the only one who's struggling with this. One of the best things that made graduate school manageable and He's still a very good friend of mine to this day, Austin McDonald. We talk about this, and we shared this with students ever since we started teaching, and I share this with clients now. Make a really good friend in grad school that you can be honest with. We met in a theoretically dense course that everyone was pretending to know what they were talking about, but it became pretty clear that they were just bluffing to sound smart. And so we just asked each other one day, why is everyone pretending? I don't understand this. And it was that moment of vulnerable openness, of realizing that, yeah, I don't get everything. I'm kind of struggling here. You're not alone when you have these stressors. I know it can be hard, and if you're year 2 and you've been working on it since your thesis, it can be a challenge to then switch gears. But the only thing you can do, and I can say at this point, is you're going to have a good sit down with your chair, and if you've got a committee, with your committee, and talk about and brainstorm. Just, be honest and say, look, I feel like I'm getting nowhere. I'm stressed. I'm burnt out. I'm getting depressed. Please help. I understand how to do this, but I just, and be honest, because it's a stressful situation, isn't it? Especially when you're struggling. It is stressful to feel that you're not getting anywhere when you really should be. So that's something where the advice would be, talk to your committee. Okay, let's see, before we run out of time. Mark, let's see, how do I select a committee chair? Do I reach out to a professor? Yeah, that's what you do. You make a meet, you set up, you either email, or if you're in class, you say, hey, I'd like to schedule a meeting to maybe talk about seeing if you would be interested in being my chair for my dissertation. And then you schedule the meeting, and then you go to the meeting prepared to say, look, this is what I want to study. This is why I'm passionate about studying this. And this is why I think you would be a really good person to serve as my chair. Be prepared to have an elevator pitch, maybe slightly longer, maybe like a 5-minute sales pitch, if you will, on your dissertation, why it's important, and why you think they would be a good chair. Whew. No, Kimmy, you are not alone on the struggle bus. And I don't know other women of color who are doing theory development and critical quantitative studies. That's not my area of expertise. But I know that it feels like being the only person, especially the only person like you, it sucks. But I promise you, you will find there are others who, if they are willing to be honest, will be saying, yeah, I'm struggling too. Let's see, related to today's topic, but you're confused about, how do I choose sample size? Tanvir, that is definitely not a question for this, and sample size selection is based upon whether you're qualitative or quantitative, population size, demographics, and feasibility. There are too many variables. That is something you should avail yourself to the literature on your topic. And if you're still further confused about, talk to your chair, because that is too many variables to bring in for something like this. Again, mixed method, Tanvir, that is something that you need. Mixed method doesn't really tell me what you're doing, or the population, or the method of analysis, because that is something that, as I've said, you need to talk with your chair about that, because that is something that they can help you with. Because quantitative uses larger sample size than qualitative, and so with mixed methods, you're going to have to find a balance for both. And that is something that, again, literature, chair, how many people you can feasibly get a hold of in the time frame. How does theory play into quantitative analysis? That is a topic for a different webinar, and we do have webinars on that, Tori. As a qualitative specialist, quantitative analysis is not something I am familiar with. So that is your supervisor told you based on, okay, then you will need to look at the literature to see how many people that others use. Because again, based on what you have said, one, I don't know how big your population is. I don't know what it is. I don't know how big your questionnaire is. And again, that is not the topic of this webinar. That is a topic for a methods webinar and how to select sample size. So that's where we are. If there are no questions further related to the topic of today's webinar, I do want to remind everyone that Statistics Solutions is a full-service dissertation consulting company, providing graduate students with timely editorial support for your dissertations and scholarly projects. We do have people who specialize in all aspects of the dissertation process, from topic development to qualitative, quantitative, mixed methods, and preparing you all the way for your presentation. And we can also help with turning your dissertation into a journal article. So for more information about our services and to receive a complimentary 30-minute consultation that is available Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern United States time, contact us at info@statisticsolutions.com, or you may use the phone number country code 1-727-442-4290. You will receive a copy of this webinar as well with audio recording and with the PowerPoint, so that way you can look back on it for your information. Yes, we do help with journal articles. Again, we have specialists for everything that can help depending on what you are doing and whether you're quantitative, qualitative, mixed, or critical. We do have those who can help. This will be the last question, as it is about time to end the webinar. What can you do when there are no professors who have expertise in your area of research? You go with whoever has the closest to either your area of expertise or the area you want to research, or who have a method that can help you. Sometimes that happens. Ideally, you will select a school that will have that, but if you don't, or if they can't work with you for whatever reason, you will then have to find someone else who can, and that means going with the next best option. Again, this is all part of the don't expect everything to go smoothly the first time around. Life happens when you make other plans, as John Lennon once saying. So I don't send participation certificates. All I can tell you is you will receive a copy of the webinar. I don't know why you would need a participation certificate, but that's not something I've been told anything about that we do. But I can discuss that with others afterwards. That being said, it is almost 2 o'clock here, which means it's almost 3 o'clock Eastern US time. I will bid all of you a good day, and I wish you all success with your dissertation projects. Again, should you need further support, we are available and willing to help with all of your dissertation needs. Thank you. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.